Girl, you make me go so loco, make me go crazy. We would make a beautiful baby.
Hello there, my wonderful brads. Welcome and welcome back, my beautiful people. I am glad that you are listening to yet another episode of the Blue Block Podcast. Remember, I am your host, Bradley, the white polar bear, flow colder than frost, hailing from the southwest of KE, all the way up in Eldo City. This episode will be talking about my journey up out of the bottle, how I quit drinking alcohol. Coincidentally, by the time you listen to this episode, I would have completed a whole year of sobriety. I should get my ship. I wanted to speak about this because it is really a key issue, especially with each and everything that I've been through. I've observed the dark sides of it. I wouldn't wanna continue passing it down to future generations. And that is what we are all about here on the Blue Block Podcast. It's all about building a community of people who undertake self-reflection and in their discoveries find and keep those things that serve them, but also doing away with those things that do not. Feel free to follow this podcast if this aligns with you, and welcome to the Dove Life.
Knock on wood, is you trying to date me? Is it yes, is it no?
Before I go too far on this episode, I would like to preface this episode by saying, you all know my love for music runs deep, and as deep as it runs, let me say I am a person who, whenever I'm listening to music, I get transmuted to a whole other dimension. My consumption of music might seem like I am in a daze. I find joy through melodies, I find peace on each and every beat, I find fulfillment in each and every rhythm. Now, on the topic that I'm here to talk about, alcohol, good old booze. The advertisements clearly stated that if you were under the age of 18, this shall not be sold to you, and you kept on seeing imagery of people having a nice time. It kinda gave you the insinuation that through this whatever so-called drink that's not necessarily meant for people under a certain age bracket, but once you consume it, you'd get this feeling of euphoria. Like that was the messaging that was kind of, being projected towards you. Then you got to the age of 18, and well, this is supposed to be sold to you. Now you have attained the age where you qualify to take part in this drink. When you take part in this drink, remember how the messaging that we gave you of like a euphoric feeling and like all this happiness, then you now have achieved access to such an experience, to such a life. Truly focusing on when it wasn't, we would see examples of those under the influence, and you would see both extremities of like when somebody is slightly drunk and when somebody is like super drunk. These were two different sides of the coin, but with the way they would always come back to it, you think this thing is really, really, really sweet. In your own childish mind, you'd be like, oh, this must be even sweeter than Coca-Cola that I'm used to. All the soft drinks that I'm actually used to. I'm like, this is the pinnacle of all of that. So much so it wouldn't be sold to me, who was not at the age bracket. So you had to wait for that necessary chance, because each and every person who took it, regardless of where they lied when it came to those sides of the coin, whether they were the slightly drunk or the super drunk, both of them in their own ways, in their own mind, they would always come back to it. They would always revert to alcohol. The biggest twist was when I came to find out that necessarily like this is no way near the sweetness that you had when it came to like drinking soft drinks and Coca-Cola. It is only when you are exposed to that side of super drunk for quite a while that this becomes apparent. The fact that it is not the best way to live out your life. You see, the cause in the situation is alcohol. The effect that it has on the user, leading to the effect that the user will have on the surrounding environment, because this is always the chain of events. When somebody partakes of such a drink, it alters their bodily function, and once it alters their bodily function, you find them reacting and affecting their environment in different ways. I have seen a lot of the most necessarily, some would say, dumb and stupid ways that alcohol could affect your life. Me seeing this firsthand, I was like, this was definitely not for me. Being, even when I was young, having that mental perception that I wouldn't want to be a victim of a drink that kinda has control over me, because the idea of always reverting back to that same drink, the idea of it having some certain effects on you, and also when you go out of your way to react and act in so many different uncouth ways, you never know the imbalances or the trauma that you're afflicting on people. And me being on the people side when it comes to this situation, I felt the trauma and the pain that had been afflicted on me from another person who necessarily partook of alcohol. So from that point and that perspective, I was like, I would never, I'd rather be caught dead doing alcohol. It can never be me, never in like a million years. But then I came of age and I saw it with my friends, and I started thinking this was cool. It's just the fear of being left out, the fear of being, not cool and not part of something. You feel me? Because it was not necessarily like one of those things where you feel like you are pressured to do it, where it's like, take this, have this. No, for me personally, like the way I saw it was like, everyone is doing it, and everyone is necessarily telling you, like giving you certain they're giving you their own subjective views on the whole experience that they had with alcohol and how it affected them. You heard of like the experiences that they had gone through once they actually had taken this, and in your own mental like psyche, you're like, I'm also trying to like escape certain things. You feel me? So like, I want to be part of that. I want to be part of that euphoric sensation that you felt when you actually partook of it. So can I get a hit? Can I have a sip? You'd find yourself at a party and everyone is chugging something, get yourself a glass. You could be like us. This night could actually be magic. Listening to that, taking a sip, but for you personally, and this is in my own perspective, I never really felt it. Like, you see the bars that everyone gets from like taking alcohol, and like that adrenaline that they in their own way sold to me, like, but if you take this you'll actually feel this and this and this and this and this and this. I was like, okay, let me try. So once I tried, I got into it and I took the sips, and I was like, wait, guys, I'm not feeling the same thing that that you guys promised. In my mind I'm like, this is not, you feel me? This is not what you guys told me. This is not what was sold in the first place. And I go through that, and I, in my own way, are devoid of that sense of total happiness, total relaxation, total openness and vulnerability. Being human, but only when you are intoxicated. I never reached that state of euphoria, and it wasn't because I was trying to. Thank God, I wasn't like chugging through a whole liter of like, you feel me, searching for that feeling. It's just like, I understood growing up was like, I never wanted to be on the other side of super drunk. So I was always like, okay, let me tread carefully whenever I drink, whenever I consume alcohol, because I don't want to lose myself too much. So I would pace myself when it comes to drinks. I would genuinely pace myself when it comes to my intake. You get me? I was more, I thrived on the side of like slightly drunk, but I never got that experience. I never got that euphoria that people tend to always, acquire once they take a sip. And then you'd find me in drinking situations where I am with those who, go for hours on it. You feel me? Like glass after glass, bottle after bottle and all of that stuff. And to me, I'm still at like my second pour and I'm there feeling like, oh God, now this is starting to feel like a chore. This is starting to feel like a task. It's starting to feel like a burden to just finish. I've seen myself after drinks and the effects to me were not the usual that you'd get from like each and every single person that you kind of, that you grew up seeing. You feel me? Me, in my own experience, the side effects used to lean towards me feeling like a very crazy headache or me genuinely getting tired, feeling sleepy. I wasn't like all of a sudden like I don't know, energized, super energized, and like was trying to, feel me, like fool around and all of that stuff. You feel me? I was more on the side of like, I really need to lay down because like that was draining. It genuinely drained my energy. Me partaking of such drinking tendencies and all of that. It was, I would be honest and say it was a heavy burden for me. And not only that, I used to see myself actually reaching levels where I would be there and I would be looking at the glass and I'm almost like finishing it, and I would reminisce on very, very, very dark thoughts, very, very depressing thoughts, very soul draining thoughts. Like I would be there and be like, oh man, like look at my life, I'm just another loser. You feel me? I wasn't like trying to have fun. I wasn't trying to have a good time. And people with me would get a kick out of it. People would actually be like, yo, we're having fun. You feel me? They would laugh and they would see, like, they would find that joy in whatever they partook. But I was just there like thinking to myself in that silence, in those, after the laughter, I'm like, I'm just a loser in a sense. And you could see this lack of life inside my eyes. I'm sure they saw it. Like I had no light within me. I was just slowly draining into the pits of depression. These to me were the running effects in my mind that helped me and really pushed me towards like quitting, because this was one of those things that never brought me happiness. I only did it because people around me actually did it. I only did it because, this was the status quo where you're like, now you're 18, you can partake of it. You feel me? So like once you do, this is how it normally works, and we always have fun, we always be happy, we always be joking around and just being in this state of euphoria. You feel me? But me personally, I never touched that. I never tapped into that energy. I was always on the other side of it, and I was just like, this is a real struggle. But at that point, you feel me, more or less other ways I'm inspired is when I see how other people lose their coordination, how bad sometimes it affects like their perception of reality. Also seeing people fighting to maintain their balance because somehow it has impaired their senses. All those were triggers for me to be like, maybe this is not necessarily like the best option. For me personally, I could not find fun in being intoxicated. I couldn't see myself ever touching happiness when I'm intoxicated. But people have grown dependency to intoxication, so much so that they truly believe in their minds through it they will find happiness. Through partaking in alcohol, that is where happiness lies. Beyond those 2 bottles of liquor, that is where I shall be happy. I wouldn't want to place my happiness in such areas of dependency where like it's a means to cope. Another dark part of it is like I have seen people partake of conversations that they would never partake, they would never dare have if they were sober. And that scared me, like the idea, because I'm one of those like free spirited human beings who necessarily like, I desire a certain sense of openness, I desire a certain sense of like connection when it comes to like be person to person, and we can achieve this through levels of communication, through levels of just spending time together. But it is hard when you come from an African culture and you see the African mindset, especially on a male perspective is like you keep and you hold on to whatever sentiments or whatever traumas or whatever you have been going through, so much so that you bury it really, really, really deep inside of you, and it becomes problematic. And this also like touches on the whole concept and the whole purpose that I set out with this podcast. I have this concept called Dove Boys and the Dove life in general, with which I would love to fully implement one day. This concept actually seeks to break the status quo when it comes to the definition of a man. You know, we still can be providers and figures of society who people look up to for leadership, but in that leadership we bleed. In that leadership we go through a lot of things, and it is upon us to relinquish that old identity of who a man is or who a man was, and redefine that, giving room for ourselves to be vulnerable and deal with the things that affects us through open and honest communication, through being real with one another, being able to talk about these things, and it not taking some bottles of alcohol to actually trigger a certain sense of openness, a certain sense of vulnerability, because I've seen people like really close themselves off to a point where they could not dare break their silence if they were just sober, because to them it takes a whole layer of intoxication for them to be open with the people around them. It's like we have created this space where a man isn't supposed to show any signs of weakness. A man can't even be able to climb the walls that he has built around himself and just be open for once, and it's like it's upon us as a society to accept this reality, and also as a man to break through those barriers and show other young examples like me and other younger examples like those like my nephews and nieces, to show them that it is okay for them to be vulnerable and be themselves and actually work through things without needing to resort to things like alcohol and all of that stuff. Because if they don't, they'll find themselves deep down a bottle of liquor, drowning in pain and causing more pain. That's why I quit in the first place. I quit when I saw my actions, when I'm intoxicated, could bring harm to the ones that I love. It could bring pain to the one that I actually care about. You never know the hurt that you bring when you are in this state. Plus, it never brought me a sense of fulfillment, because as I said to you earlier, like as I started this episode, music for me was the antithesis of fulfillment. Like nothing could come compared to that feeling. When I listen to music, I could not describe the feeling. I drank booze and I knew the feeling. They drank booze and I knew the feeling. Alcohol is not the answer.
Girl, you make me go so loco, make me go crazy. We would make a beautiful baby. Knock on wood, is you trying to date me? Is it yes, is it no?